India's Voice to the World. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, Israel says it stopped fighting for many hours in northern Gaza to help civilians leave. Telecommunication and internet down again in Gaza. Antony Blinken pays unannounced visit to Iraq, says humanitarian pause could advance prospect of getting hostages released. Blinken to meet Turkish foreign minister on Monday.
Everyone would welcome the humanitarian pause because, again, it could advance things that we're all trying to accomplish.
India remains unbeaten at Cricket World Cup 2023, registers 8 consecutive win by defeating South Africa. And in Women's Asian Champions Trophy, India secures the title second time by defeating Japan 4-0. A ray of hope in the month-long conflict has emerged amidst pressure for a humanitarian pause. Israel has stopped fighting in northern Gaza for several hours, 2 days in a row, to create safe passage for civilians to move to the south. A military spokesperson said, and I quote, "Saturday and Sunday, Israeli troops for many hours with prior notice and warning. We stopped fighting in certain areas of northern Gaza, which is the main combat area, and we called on Palestinians to move south." U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Sunday said that U.S. officials were working to secure a humanitarian pause in Gaza that would advance several priorities, including getting more aid to Palestinians and also getting hostages held by Hamas released. Blinken, during an unannounced stop in Baghdad, stressed on the need to prevent spread of Israel-Hamas conflict.
It's important that the pause advance a number of things. One of them is hostages. We are intensely focused, the United States, Israel, every other country that has one of its citizens being held hostage by Hamas, to bring them home. There again, a humanitarian pause can also help advance that and create an environment in which we can do as much as possible for people who so desperately need the assistance.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will hold talks with his Turkish counterpart, Hakan Fidan, on Monday on the ongoing Gaza conflict. Blinken arrived in Turkey's capital Ankara on Sunday after a brief stopover in Baghdad. Blinken for 3 days has been dashing around the West Asia, trying to prevent a wider regional conflict. DD India correspondent sends us this ground report on the current situation from Israel.
Even as Israel continued with its intensified military campaign inside the Gaza Strip, there were refugee camps. Jabalia and Al-Bureij were hit, and the casualties have now gone up to 10,000 of the number of Gazans dead since the intensified military campaign by Israel started. The number of injured is anywhere close to about 35,000. While all this is on, hectic diplomacy was on. U.S. Secretary of State or the U.S. Foreign Minister Antony Blinken was in Ramallah, the capital of Palestine in West Bank, and met with the President of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas. The meeting, which is said to have lasted for about 45 minutes, there were no joint statements issued after the meeting, making it very clear that the Arab leaders and the United States is not on the same page when it comes to ceasefire. The Arab leaders, including Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, wants the U.S. to effect a ceasefire, which the U.S. is in no position because the Israelis are not listening to them. Antony Blinken is in the region in West Asia with a message from President Biden for a humanitarian pause. But Benjamin Netanyahu, during his meeting with Blinken, told him very clearly there is no question that Israel will go in for a humanitarian pause, even as Israel allowed a 3-hour window for North Gazans to pass out to come out of the Gaza city on the Salah highway and move down to south. but there were hardly any movements. Clearly, in the days to come, the military campaign of Israel will intensify. Now the threat of how the Arab countries, especially the neighboring countries and non-state actors which are backed by Iran, react, and would it then escalate into a regional war? Amritpal Singh for DD India.
Prime Minister Netanyahu disciplined a junior member of his cabinet who appeared to voice openness to the idea of Israel carrying out a nuclear strike on Gaza. Netanyahu's office issued a statement saying that the minister concerned, Heritage Minister Amieh Elayu from a far-right party in the coalition government, had been suspended from cabinet meetings until further notice. Earlier asked in a radio interview about a hypothetical nuclear option, Elayu said that that's one way. His remark drew swift condemnation from around the Arab world and was deemed objectionable by a US official. Jordan's Air Force personnel airdropped urgent medical aid to the Jordanian field hospital in Gaza early on Monday. A Royal Air Force plane dropped urgent medical aid using parachutes to the Jordanian field hospital in Gaza. Supplies there were about to run out due to the delay of delivering aid through Rafah crossing. The Israeli military on Sunday said that it exposed a network of Hamas tunnels, command centers and rocket launchers beneath and adjacent to hospitals in northern Gaza. In a press briefing, Israel's chief military spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, gave no details of a reported attack in Lebanon, but he said that the military operates based on intelligence information and examines every event thoroughly. Israel's army spokesperson presented videos, photographs and audio recordings that demonstrated Hamas's strategy of using hospitals as cover and preventing civilians from leaving combat zones.
Hamas systematically exploits hospitals as part of its war machine. This is a satellite image of the hospital complex taken after the massacre of 7th of October. I am going to zoom in on the area here. Okay, across the street, only 75 meters, 80 meters to the hospital. Here, the IDF identified a launch pad, meaning they launch rockets from here. I want to repeat it. They launch rockets on Israel 75 meters from an hospital. Why? They know precisely that if Israel will airstrike a launch pad like that, the hospital would be damaged.
Israeli forensic teams are screening cars that were damaged during the October 7th Hamas attack, looking for evidence of human remains. The vehicles were collected in a junkyard in southern Israel in Netivot, where the forensic teams are also trying to identify owners of the cars and what might have happened to them during the attack. At least 1,400 Israelis were killed in the deadliest day of the nation's 75-year history.
This is one of the last places where you can actually see the damage that was done, because we're clearing out a lot. But it hurts, it hurts your heart every time you walk in or every time you see this, because you know just how many people died in these cars and how many people were hurt, on the 7th of October. It's a date that we'll remember probably for the rest of our lives.
The U.S. Ohio-class submarine arrived in the Middle East on Sunday. Since October 7th, when Hamas launched its terrorist attack on Israel, the U.S. military has bolstered its presence in the Middle East. Ohio-class submarines are nuclear-powered submarines which are capable of carrying cruise missiles and conducting special operations. They are designed for extended strategic deterrent patrols. Also, in mid-October, the Pentagon ordered the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower aircraft carrier strike group, in fact, to the eastern Mediterranean near Israel to deter Iran or Hezbollah from joining the Israel-Hamas conflict. And up next, we take a look at other stories making it to the headlines with focus on Israel-Hamas conflict. A French military aircraft landed in Egypt with 18 tons of humanitarian supplies, including food, medication and generators for Gaza on Saturday. Vital supplies were sent through the military plane as a mission to support Gaza hospitals. France also said that it was sending a naval vessel to the eastern Mediterranean. Many foreign nationals were stuck at Gaza's Rafah border after evacuations were suspended on Saturday. The suspension came as a result of an Israeli strike on an ambulance in Gaza transporting injured people. Efforts were underway to resume evacuations of injured Gazans and also foreign nationals through the Rafah crossing. Israel President welcomed the new U.S. ambassador to Israel, Jacques Liu, on Sunday, receiving him at the president's house in Jerusalem. Liu noted that he arrived at a difficult time and reiterated that U.S. stands with Israel. Let's get you updates on Russia-Ukraine war now. At least 5 people were injured in Russian missile strikes on Odessa late on Sunday, Ukrainian officials said. One of the city's principal art galleries, Odessa National Fine Arts Museum, was badly damaged. The walls of the building were damaged. Some windows and glass were broken, according to Ole Kuiper, Odessa's governor. The museum, in one of the oldest palaces of Odessa, housed before the war more than 10,000 pieces of art, including paintings by some of the best-known Russian and Ukrainian artists of the late 19th and early 20th century. Kuiper said that all 5 of the injured were hospitalized. Russian military forces carried out airstrikes on a drone warehouse in Syria's Idlib governorate, the Russian Interfax news agency reported on Sunday. No information about the scale of the damage or potential casualties was available. The Syrian army accused rebels, calling them Islamist jihadists, for attacks on government-held areas in Idlib and Aleppo provinces and denied indiscriminate shelling of civilian areas in areas under rebel control. All right, a quick look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the globe now. A caravan of migrants from Mexico's Tapacalto city is heading towards the U.S. southern border. The smaller caravan is expected to join a larger one, estimated at 3,500 people. Many migrants are fleeing poverty and political instability in their home countries. The Darien Gap region has seen a record number of people crossing this year. Following up to the events when a man drove through the airport barrier, Hamburg police officials evacuated the airport urgently. Then they cordoned off the area for search of the persons. Later, the suspect was arrested and the airport was again made operational for the passengers. Moldova voted on Sunday to elect mayors of villages, towns and cities in one of the last elections before the nation goes to polls for presidential elections next year. The counting of votes is underway as President Maia Sandu accuses Russia of meddling in the internal issues. We're heading for a short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Donald Trump set to testify in a civil fraud trial on Monday. Bilateral meeting between Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Chinese President Xi Jinping to take place today. And world number 1, Novak Djokovic cruises to record extending 7th Paris Masters title.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India Live and I'm Preeti Kaur. Let's continue getting you more international updates. The conflict in Middle East is expected to dominate the agenda when top diplomats from G7 countries meet in Tokyo on Tuesday. The foreign ministers are wrapping up a year of G7 meetings as Japan looks to successfully conclude its presidency of the group. Chris Gilbert gets us more from Tokyo.
Well, when the G7 foreign ministers meet here in Tokyo next week, it is going to be the conflict in the Middle East that will be top of the agenda. That wasn't always the case. When Japan's foreign minister Yoko Kamikawa originally called this summit back in September, the goal was simply an end-of-year catch-up, a wrap of all the meetings, G7 meetings so far, a catch-up on how member countries are doing on their goals and their priorities stated in those meetings, such as countering perceived Chinese military assertiveness while maintaining independent economic and diplomatic ties with Beijing, supporting Ukraine in its conflict against Russia, cooperating on climate change and AI regulation and a myriad of other topics. But it is going to be Israel's ongoing bombardment of Gaza, democratic calls around the world for a ceasefire. These issues are going to be discussed. Japan is going to be concerned. It is going to be wary of analysts' speculations that the US resources, the military resources going towards Israel at the moment and going towards Ukraine at the moment, may be depleting military resources that could be coming in this direction towards Japan, towards South Korea, and the US's ability, pledged ability to protect Japan and South Korea's interests in what it calls a free and open Indo-Pacific. Japan is going to be looking for reassurances from US State Secretary Antony Blinken that this part of the world remains a priority for the US, and certainly a meeting that South Korea is going to be watching very closely as well. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo reporting for DD India.
Russia's new strategic nuclear submarine, the Imperator Alexander III, carried out a successful test launch of the Bulava ballistic missile. The missile, which was launched from an underwater position in the White Sea off Russia's northern coast, hit a target thousands of kilometers away on the Kamchatka Peninsula in the Russian Far East.
In the midst of its ongoing over-year-long conflict with Ukraine, Russia has carried out a successful test launch of the Bulava ballistic missile by its new nuclear-powered submarine, Imperator Alexander III. The Russian Defense Ministry says the missile is designed to carry nuclear warheads. Launched from an underwater position in the White Sea off Russia's northern coast, the intercontinental missile hit a target thousands of kilometers away on the Kamchatka Peninsula in the Russian Far East. The 12-meter-long Bulava missile, which has an estimated range of around 8,000 kilometers, can carry up to 6 nuclear warheads. The Burey-class strategic missile cruiser is equipped with 16 Bulava missiles and modern torpedo weapons. The Russian Navy has 3 nuclear-powered submarines of the Burey class in service. In December, Russian President Vladimir Putin took part in a ceremony setting the Imperator Alexander III afloat. Amid Russia's ties with the West hitting new lows, President Putin has been pushing for the country to maintain its nuclear deterrent to counter what he calls growing security threats. The country's latest move comes days after Russian President Putin signed a law withdrawing Russia's ratification of the global treaty banning nuclear weapons tests. Russia said its de-ratification of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty is merely designed to bring the country into line with the United States, which signed but never ratified the treaty. As per Russian diplomats, Moscow will not resume nuclear testing unless Washington does.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese will hold bilateral talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Monday. Albanese arrived in Beijing on Sunday ahead of bilateral meet with President Xi Jinping. Talking to reporters, Albanese said that he is looking forward to further constructive dialogue and also further advancement of friendship between the two nations. Albanese's government has taken credit for stabilizing ties with China since coming to office last year. He also becomes the first Australian leader to visit China since 2016 when he landed in Shanghai on Saturday. Donald Trump is due to testify today in a New York civil trial accusing the former president of fraudulently inflating his wealth. State prosecutors are seeking to bar Trump from doing business in his home state, and $250 million have been put as damages. U.S. correspondent Ira Spitzer gets us more.
New York Attorney General Letitia James has accused Donald Trump and others at the Trump Organization of inflating the value of assets by billions of dollars in order to obtain better terms on loans and insurance policies. Trump has denied those charges and called the proceedings biased, setting up a courtroom confrontation. Last week, Trump's two sons, Donald Jr. and Eric Trump, both testified and tried to distance themselves from the accounting aspects of the family business. That may prove more difficult for the former president, since he is the owner of the Trump Organization, whose companies are involved in real estate and other ventures, and ran it until becoming president in 2016. Even before the trial, the judge ruled that fraud had been committed, so now it's essentially a matter of determining how serious the penalties should be, something that will also be decided by the judge and not a jury. Because it's a civil trial, Trump can't go to jail, but prosecutors have sought to fine him and others as much as $250 million and revoke the organization's ability to continue operating in New York, where it has properties such as the Trump Tower in Manhattan. It's one of several trials that Trump is facing as he seeks to regain the presidency in elections next year. The former president is currently the frontrunner to be the Republican Party's nominee to challenge Joe Biden. Ira Spitzer reporting in San Francisco for DD India.
And now we take a look at other stories which are making it to the headlines from India. India promptly sent earthquake relief to Nepal on Sunday following a deadly 6.4 magnitude quake in the Jajarkot region. The aid package included medical equipment and relief supplies, reflecting India's neighborhood-first policy to assist neighboring nations in crisis. Malaysian Foreign Minister Zamri Abdul Kadir received a warm welcome on his first visit to India to strengthen the enhanced strategic partnership. He will co-chair the 6th India-Malaysia Joint Commission meeting with Dr. S. Jaishankar in New Delhi on November 7th, following the invitation. The Stage 4 of the Graded Response Action Plan is activated as Delhi's air quality continues to be severe. To combat this, the Delhi Fire Services collaborated with the government to spray water at hotspots in an effort to alleviate the situation. Specialized troops of Spear Corps Indian Army rehearsed combat free fall and delivery of logistics by guided precision aerial delivery system using aerial platforms to validate rapid response capabilities. On to sports now. India beat second place South Africa by 243 runs to register the 8th win of the World Cup at Eden Gardens. The men in blue bundled out South Africa on a paltry score of 83 runs. Ravindra Jadeja took 5 wickets while Virat Kohli hit his 49th ODI ton. Let's get you a recap of how it all happened in this post-match report.
In yet another remarkable performance by Team India, this time at Kolkata's Eden Gardens, India registered its 8-0 clean sweep at the ongoing edition of ICC Men's Cricket World Cup Group Stage Encounter. In a clash that was seen as one of the most intense battles at this World Cup, South Africa trembled in the power play itself that started with Quinton de Kock's early wicket. South Africa got off to a disastrous start in the 327-run chase against India. Team South Africa were reduced to 35 for 3 at the end of first power play itself. Mohammad Siraj removed in form Quinton de Kock for 5, Ravindra Jadeja packed Temba for 11 and Mohammad Shami removed Aiden for 9. Shortly after this, the duo once again combined and removed Hendrik Klaasen and Rezi van der Dussen to reduce South Africa to 40 for 5 in just 13.1 overs. Talking about Team India, it was a double delight for the fans as Virat Kohli hit a century to equal Sachin Tendulkar's ODI century record and India ensured complete dominance over the tournament. Kohli's century led the way for India, putting up a mammoth total of 326 for 5 in 50 overs. India came out all guns blazing with Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill. The run rate slowed down as Keshav Maharaj kept a check on the batters throughout the middle overs after the openers fell. But Kohli and Shreyas Iyer soldiered through that phase. The stand finally ended on 134 of 158 when Iyer fell to Lungi Nagidi on 77 of 87. KL Rahul fell soon thereafter, and Surya Kumar Yadav then played an entertaining cameo, smashing 22 in 14 balls, and Ravindra Jadeja then did the same. The all-rounder stayed unbeaten on 29 of 15, while Kohli at the other end got to his milestone. He finished unbeaten on 101 of 121. Since then, the Indian bowlers have started off doing what they do best. Team India is now all set to face Team Netherlands on 12th of November at M. Chinnaswamy Stadium. Narayan Singh's report for DD India.
And there's another good news for India. The Indian women's hockey team trounced Japan 4-0 to win the Women's Asian Champions Trophy in Ranchi on Sunday. Now, this is India's second Women's Asian Champions Trophy in history, having won the first title back in 2016 in Singapore. Japan, who came into the game as the defending champions and were looking to take revenge for the loss suffered in the bronze medal match at the recently concluded Asian Games in Hangzhou, got comprehensively beaten. All right, on those notes of victory, we'll end this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, and also Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.